It was a sunny day in a small town, where cultural diversity blended at every corner. The aroma of fresh coffee and local delicacies floated through the air as people gathered in the square to enjoy the vibrant atmosphere. Among laughter and conversations, a man named Jamal, a 28-year-old black man, walked towards a community event. He had always believed that the community was a place for everyone, regardless of their background. The square was full, and Jamal felt excited to see a crowd gathered. He was known for his storytelling ability, and that afternoon he would make a presentation about overcoming challenges and unity. However, as he approached the stage, something unexpected happened. A middle-aged woman, with a disdainful expression, caught everyone's attention. Her name was Karen, and she was known for her controversial opinions and hostile behavior towards people of color. "Go back to Africa," she shouted, interrupting the murmur of the crowd. Her words echoed in the square, like thunder breaking the tranquility of the day. The atmosphere, which had been festive, grew heavy. Looks of shock and disbelief hung in the air, and the crowd began to stir. Jamal stopped for a moment, feeling anger and shame trying to overwhelm him. But instead of letting those emotions take over, he took a deep breath and decided he would not allow intolerance to silence him. With a smile on his face, Jamal looked directly at Karen. "You know," he began, with a calm and firm voice, "Africa is a beautiful place, full of rich cultures and inspiring stories. But I am not from there. I am part of this community, just like you." The crowd fell silent, caught in the tension of the moment, as if everyone was eagerly awaiting his next word. Karen, surprised by the response, hesitated. Jamal continued, "Did you know that diversity is what makes our world so special? Each person here has a unique story, and all these stories intertwine to create something greater." He gestured to the crowd, which was now attentive, with many nodding in agreement. "Instead of dividing, let's unite and learn from one another." The atmosphere in the square started to change. Some people began to applaud, while others murmured words of support. Karen, realizing that she had lost control of the situation, tried to interrupt again, but Jamal did not let that affect him. He kept speaking, each word more powerful than the last. "I grew up listening to stories from my grandmother, a strong woman who faced challenges but never let hate define her. She always said, 'Our strength lies in our unity. What we need to do now is build bridges, not walls.'" Hearing this, the crowd began to stir again, but this time in support of Jamal. He was touching on something deep, something that everyone felt but few had the courage to express. Empathy was taking over the square, and gradually more people began to identify with his message. Karen, realizing that her strategy was failing, resorted to a more personal attack. "You are just an immigrant. You don't belong here," she shouted, trying to regain the attention that was quickly slipping away from her. Jamal, without losing his calm, responded, "Do you know what it means to be an immigrant? It is having the courage to leave everything behind in search of a better future. I am not an immigrant. I am a citizen, someone who has the right to dream and live here. Just like you." The crowd began to cheer, and it seemed that the wind was changing. Jamal saw people from different backgrounds coming together, sharing smiles and looks of understanding. He realized he was in a crucial moment, where his words could not only impact that woman but also create a wave of change in the community. "Let's talk about what unites us," Jamal said, "and not about what divides us. Each of us has a story, a struggle, and that is what makes us human." With that, he invited some audience members to share their own stories, creating a space for everyone to feel heard and valued. The stories began to flow. An elderly woman spoke about how she immigrated from a distant country in search of a better future for her family. A young man who grew up in a tough neighborhood shared his journey of overcoming challenges and how he found hope in the arts. With each story told, the connection between people grew, and Jamal's message spread like a fire that could not be extinguished. But what Jamal did not know was that Karen's story, the woman who had started the commotion, also had its own layers. And as the crowd united around his words, Karen found herself confronting not only what she had said but also her own insecurities and fears. As Jamal shared inspiring stories from the audience, the looks of admiration and support focused on him. The energy in the square was palpable. People were connecting in a way they had never imagined before. But amidst this atmosphere of unity, Karen was in a different place. Jamal's words reverberated within her, and for the first time, she began to question her own beliefs. She remembered her childhood, when she played with friends from different ethnicities. She recalled how, in school, her ideas were shaped by her parents, who often spoke negatively about the others. The prejudice she had learned over the years now clashed with the reality she saw before her eyes. While applauding and becoming emotional about the others' stories, she began to feel out of place, as if she were in a space where she did not belong. Jamal, noticing that the crowd's energy was focusing on transformation, decided it was time to invite Karen to the stage. "Karen," he said, with an empathetic look, "your words brought us here, and maybe now is the time for you to join us too. You have a story, and perhaps we can learn from it." The crowd fell silent again, but this time there was a mix of expectation and curiosity. Karen hesitated, her heart racing. She had never shared her insecurities before, but the atmosphere around her seemed to encourage her. In a moment of vulnerability, she stepped onto the stage. "I don't know where to start," Karen said, her voice trembling. "I grew up in a family that always taught me to be afraid of the different. I heard so many negative things about people who don't look like me, and for a long time, I believed it was true." She looked at the crowd, and her eyes filled with tears. "But seeing all of you here, I realize that's not what I want. That's not who I am." The crowd began to murmur words of encouragement, and Jamal urged her to continue. "Why don't you talk about what brought you here?" he gently suggested. Karen took a deep breath and continued. "Recently, my son became friends with a black child at school. He asked me to invite the boy over to play at our house, and I hesitated. I didn't know what to think. I wondered if it was right, if he would be safe. But then I realized I was passing on to him the same fear I had learned. It was hard for me to accept that. I don't want my son to grow up like this." The authenticity of her words touched everyone, and the crowd began to applaud, not only for the courage she was showing but for the change that could occur in her heart. Jamal made an encouraging gesture with his head, showing her that it was all right. "I don't want to be this person," Karen said, wiping her tears. "I want to learn, and I want my son to learn to respect and love everyone, regardless of skin color. I want to understand. I want to change." With those words, the square erupted in applause. Jamal approached her and held her hand, a symbolic gesture of acceptance. "That is what we need," he said, smiling. "Change starts with each of us. We are all learning and growing together." The crowd began to stir again, but now it was a stir of hope and possibility. Conversations began to flow, and people gathered in small groups, discussing their own experiences, fears, and dreams. Jamal realized that the connection he had sought to create was materializing right before his eyes. A young man in the audience raised his hand. "I also have a story," he said. "And just like Karen, I grew up with fears. But I found strength in friendship. My best friend is from a different culture, and together we learned to respect and understand each other's struggles." The stories continued to unfold. Mothers shared their anxieties about their children's futures in a divided world, while young people spoke about their hopes and dreams. Each account added a new layer to the tapestry of the community, showing how love and acceptance were more powerful than any prejudice. Meanwhile, Karen observed the impact her words had caused. The tears that had once been of despair were now of relief. She realized that she had the power to change the narrative, not just for herself but for her family and the community. This was a new opportunity to be part of something greater. Jamal, seeing what was happening, decided it was time to close the event, but in a way that resonated with everyone. "Today, we all learned something valuable. The true strength of a community is not in avoiding difference but in embracing it. Let's continue to support each other, to listen to one another, and to build a better future together." The crowd applauded, and the energy was contagious. People were hugging, exchanging phone numbers, promising to meet again to continue the conversation about acceptance and change. As the event came to an end, Karen approached Jamal. "Thank you so much," she said, gratitude evident in her eyes. You made me see that there is hope, that we can all change. Jamal smiled. Change starts with the willingness to want to learn. We are all human beings, and each one of us has the power to make a difference. As participants began to disperse, the atmosphere in the square was charged with a new energy. Jamal knew that day would not be forgotten. He had seen not only a woman open up, but a community willing to unite amidst diversity. And so, with a new purpose, the stories continued to be told, not just in the squares but in homes, schools, and the hearts of each person. The struggle against prejudice and the pursuit of unity were just beginning, but the seed of change had been planted, and the future looked brighter than ever.